Welcome back to Never Enough Novels. It's time to pick my April TBR using my TBR jar. I started off the year with about 40 prompts in here, and I'm picking out 3 prompts each month to help me select books from my physical TBR that I actually need to read. If you need ideas for your own TBR jars, I'm going to put a link down below in the description to a blog post that I wrote that has over 50 ideas that you can choose from. Sometimes that's the hardest part, it's just coming up with prompts for these TBR jars. Since I'm trying to read books that I actually own, I kind of use this book cart as my physical TBR and collect all the books that I want to read at some point on here so that it's easier for me to find books that will fit these prompts. I also have a few books on my Kindle that I can choose from, so let's get right into it and pick the first prompt. All right, first up for April is a book with a title that is 2 words or less. Okay, so that should be pretty easy to find. One immediately came to mind, which is The Sirens by Amelia Hart. So here's a quick little spoiler. This is going to be one of the celebrity book club choices for April. So this is high on my TBR. If you want to see all of the celebrity book club spoilers for April, you can head to the video that I just recently posted. So this was one of the choices, and I got a copy of this from the publisher. So huge thanks to St. Martin's Press for sending this my way. The story seems really interesting. Like, I've always been kind of fascinated by the idea of sirens in mythology and in fantasies. So I think this is like a mix of kind of historical fiction, women's fiction, and a little bit of magical realism as well. The story takes place over 3 different timelines. So our first one is in 2019, and our main character, Lucy, basically wakes up from some horrific nightmare, and she finds her hands around her ex-lover's throat. So she's like horrified by what she's done, so she flees to find her sister Jess. But when she gets to her sister Jess's house, she's not there and doesn't come back. So Lucy decides to stay there for a little while, and she kind of gets to know the people in this small town and finds out that there's been some weird disappearances, like men getting lost at sea or hearing voices in caverns. So something unusual going on, and Lucy decides to read her sister's journals from when she was younger to try and figure out if there's any clues about what's going on or what might have happened to her sister and why she's missing. Then the second timeline is about 20 years earlier, and we meet Jess while she's a teenager. So Jess grew up with this allergy to water, which always kind of made her feel different and separate from the other kids. But when an art teacher takes an interest in Jess's drawings and in her, she starts to see some hope for like a different life than what she's leading now. And then the third timeline is centuries earlier, so that takes us back to 1800, and we meet 2 twins who were taken from their father in Ireland and sent on this convict ship headed for Australia. And these twins have like a traumatic history with the sea, so they are terrified at first, but as they spend more time on the boat, they start to feel their bodies changing and this alluring call from the sea. So these 3 timelines are kind of woven together throughout the book, and from other early reviews that I've read, it's not too complicated, so I know that can be daunting for some people with multiple timelines, but they said it's written in a way that makes it very easy to follow everything that's going on. So I just think the story with a little bit of that magical realism element is going to be really intriguing. The next book I'm going to pick with 2 words or less is Heavy Hitter by Katie Cotugno. This is a baseball romance book, and honestly, as much as I want to read The Sirens, this feels like perfect for this time of year since opening day is just happening and we are just getting to the start of baseball season. This book is also like really short. I think it's only little over 200 pages, so this would be like a really quick read, which is kind of nice. I honestly don't know much about it. I just know that it's a baseball romance book. Okay, so this book stars Lacey Logan, who is a celebrity with 8 chart-topping albums and sold-out stadiums. I wonder if we're getting like Taylor Swift vibes here. And she discovers some bad things about her longtime boyfriend, so she starts to like lose confidence in her own story until she meets Jimmy Hodges, a major league catcher at the end of his career. Sparks are flying between these 2, and we've got basically a celebrity and a kind of sports guy at the end of his career. So I am very curious now if this has like Taylor and Travis vibes, which makes me honestly want to read this even more. But I always love a good sports romance, and especially with it being the start of baseball season, I think I'm going to pick this one this month as my choice for the first prompt. So let's pull out my second prompt and see what's up next. This one is a book that you've had more than a year. Oh man, I feel like I don't want to admit this, but probably a lot of the books on my TBR I have had more than a year because I tend to buy books and then not read them right away, or I get all excited and then just completely forget about them. So let's see. An obvious one is The Women. This, I don't know when exactly this came out, but I've had this from Book of the Month forever, probably from like the very first time it was selected. So this is a book that I know everyone adores, and it is phenomenal, but it's also, I think, like really depressing and sad, and just deals with a lot of heavy topics because it's about the women who helped during the Vietnam War, and their experiences like throughout the war. So I've heard it's pretty gruesome and gets into a lot of detail about these women. I think they were the nurses. Yeah, so it stars Frankie, whose brother ships out to serve in Vietnam, and she decides to join the Army Nurse Corps to follow him to Vietnam. So we hear about Frankie's experience with the war and her friends that she made there, and just some of the things that they go through. I mean, Kristen Hannah is one of my all-time favorite authors. She is an incredible writer and tells fascinating stories that will just grip you like right from the beginning. But I don't normally read sad books. I love reading to escape and reading like fun, happy ever afters. So I've just always kind of put this on the back burner because I know it's going to be a very different experience than what I'm used to. But maybe this would be a good chance to actually give it a try. Another book that I've had at least a year now is, okay, so this one's Tower of Dawn by Sarah J. Maas. This is a book in the Throne of Glass series. I have had her entire Throne of Glass series for ages now, and it has just taken me so long to read them. So last year, I finally started reading the first book in the series, and I made it up to Tower of Dawn and Empire of Storms. And I started to like buddy read the two of those because those two books take place during the same timeline, just in different areas. So there is a mechanism that people have figured out where you can read like a couple chapters of Tower of Dawn, then a couple chapters of Empire of Storms. So you're reading along the same timeline and going back and forth between these two books. So I didn't want to put Empire of Storms on this list as well, but that's essentially what I'm doing. I'm in the middle of this. I just never finished it. So I got like maybe a third or halfway through the buddy read and like totally lost steam. So for the longest time, I've been like meaning to get back into finishing these books because I want to finish this series. I know it's incredible. It didn't captivate me the same way A Court of Thorns and Roses series did. So for that reason, it's just been a little bit tougher to get back into it. But I do need to finish the series at some point because then I want to move on to Crescent City and see what that's all about. So this is a good option for this prompt as well. Between the two of these, gosh, this is kind of a tough choice for me because it's really pushing my buttons and making me read something that I've just been putting off for a while. Which one do you think I should pick? Let me know in the comments. I'm going to go with The Women because it's probably less of a time commitment, but I know I should really read Tower of Dawn and finish that as well. But we'll say The Women is going to be my official choice this month for this prompt. Okay, so let's do prompt number 3. This one is going to be the last one for the month. A book that scares you. Ooh, that's an interesting one. So that would have to be like some sort of thriller or horror book. I have The Shining on here. That would be a reread for me because I read it a long time ago and it's one of my all-time favorites that Stephen King wrote. But since it is a reread, I feel like that doesn't really count. I have a book on my Kindle called Tell Me What You Did by Carter Wilson, which I got from Libby that I honestly need to read in the next like 10 days before it gets returned back to Libby. So maybe that one will be a good choice for this prompt. Okay, I didn't know exactly what this one was about when I put it on hold on Libby, so I'm going to quickly look through the actual description. So Poe is the host of a popular true crime podcast. She gets people to confess their crimes for a living in her anonymous situation. So people come on her show and they're granted anonymity and instant fame, which is a combination that's difficult to resist. But when a strange and oddly familiar man appears on her show, Poe is forced to take a second look. He claims to be her mother's murderer from years ago, but Poe knows that her mother's murderer is dead because she was the one who killed him. So that premise sounds really interesting and probably gets a little creepy at some point, which would fit well with a book that scares me. It honestly doesn't take much. I get freaked out by any little thing. So since that one is due back at the library, that would be definitely a good choice for this month. I think I'm just going to leave it at that and pick that one. Again, that was Tell Me What You Did by Carter Wilson, and go with that as my choice of a book that scares you this month. So with that, my 3 official choices for the month are Heavy Hitter, Sports Romance, The Women, which is obviously a much heavier literary fiction novel, and then Tell Me What You Did, which is more of a true crime podcast thriller. Let me know in the comments if you have any books that would fit any of these 3 prompts that you would pick for this month, or which ones you would choose off of my list for me instead. And make sure you hit like on this video and subscribe to see next month's TBR choices from my TBR jar.